Hello, it is Tara Boothby from Sojourn Psychology, and I'm a registered psychologist. Today, I want to talk to you about deconstruction. Have you heard this word? Have you been saying this word? It's an interesting term that is popularized right now in many conversations, particularly in spiritual groups or religious groups. So, what I think it's important for me to speak about it is because this is actually a philosophical or psychological term. It's not brand new language, it's been around for decades. And so I thought I would clear up some of the misinformation or really help people to hone in on if you want to deconstruct something, if you want to deconstruct a personal value, if you want to deconstruct emotion, if you want to deconstruct your worldview, really, then there's some important ingredients. There are aspects to consider because deconstruction doesn't mean destroying. Deconstruction is not blowing up our lives. That is false. It's a bit of a pet peeve in my world, in the mental health world, because we have our diagnostic manual, the DSM, and there's lots of really important information in this book, lots of important classes of pathology. And these terms tend to get misconstrued, misused a lot, like words like bipolar, or terms, I should say, terms like bipolar or narcissism. Narcissistic is a really popular word right now. It's often misused, it's often misunderstood. So, paralleling deconstruction to the DSM, the first thing I'm saying is that using language does not mean that you are giving yourself diagnostic credibility. Unfortunately, oftentimes we find these buzzwords, we think we know what they, or we think we know what they mean. Yeah, we think we know what they mean, but we haven't really looked into what they actually mean. So many people are talking about deconstruction and they're classing all sorts of different behaviors or people experiences into this mass category. And it's really confusing, and it's removing the potency of the power of deconstructing. We all want to deconstruct. It is so valuable. This is like the root of good psychological growth. This is the root of growing forward in our lives. May we all deconstruct further and further into the better versions of ourselves. From an emotionally focused point of view, we would understand deconstruction as the movement away from a negative view of self, a negative view of others, to a positive view of self and a positive view of others. In the spiritual class, and that's the important bulk of it just right now, is deconstruction is a category for some shift of thinking and people unraveling their own painful experience. So that is moving from a negative view of God to a positive view of God. We don't want to deconstruct from a negative view of self further into a negative view of self. We don't want to deconstruct further from a negative view of others into a more negative view of others. Just the same in our spiritual sense, we don't want to deconstruct further from the God that you know, a negative view of the God that you know, into a further view, negative view of the God that you know is negative. So deconstruction isn't moving from something to nothing. Relationship with self, relationship with others, relationship with higher power. Deconstruction is not a movement away from relationship to nothing. It's a movement towards more fulfillment, more truth, more of those things that are of love's kind. So I got Jacques, because Jacques is the boy who coined the term deconstruction, Jacques Derrida, and this is from the Encyclopedia Britannica. This is ooh. This is where theorists shine, and why it's important to go back and understand why we're using the words that we are. If you love a word, why don't you just Google what that word means so that you truly understand and you can better embody or possibly correct if there's a better word. Deconstruction questions the fundamental conceptual distinctions or oppositions in Western philosophy through close examination of the language and logic of philosophical and literary texts. Okay, so that's a lot. So we're questioning fundamental concepts. Good for you. question everything. If something is fundamental to my nature, I should be challenging myself to notice those roots that I'm holding so dearly and wonder about them, to think about them, to talk about them, to read about them, and to look at other fields and branches of the study of humankind to better be informed about fundamental concepts that I'm living with. And to notice the distinctions or oppositions in Western philosophy. So when we're looking at our Western philosophy, it's philosophy, psychology, history, spirituality, religion, the context of our lives, and the story that we participate in as a Westerner. This is not just a Western thing, but this is the language being used here. And deconstruction, it seems to be this Western trend. It's interesting because Jacques wrote this in the 1960s, and here we are, and it's just like fully blooming in another way. Or is it repeating? Because we've had different themes of this level of deconstruction in spiritual systems in the 70s and also in political systems. We've seen that in the 60s and all these philosophies of change. This is a normal thing to happen, and it is a good thing to happen. Close examination of language and logic. So we want to make things explicit. I want to explicitly know. I want to evoke understanding in me. I want to distill and to have a better way of connecting into truth, love, and truth and love is best informed when we surround ourselves with all sorts of quality information, reputable sources, and not just one branch of philosophical thinking. They all work beautifully together. And we don't have to agree with everything we read, but not agreeing with something can also inform us so that we better agree with other parts of how we view our way of being in the world around us as a social, emotional, intellectual, physical, occupational, and spiritual being. We are whole people who are living in wholly functioning lives with other whole people who are wholly functioning. And we're fallible, we're imperfect, we are flawed and fabulous. That's a lot to not simplify. So when we're deconstructing, it is not a simple move. It is lending ourselves further into this thoughtful place, the salon of thought in one's own mind or in one's relationship with others, one's relationship with good quality literature, philosophical information. So I'm really happy to consider this definition of deconstruction. Deconstruction is not fluff, just like love is not fluff. Love is not Valentine's Day. Love is so much more. And of course I believe that because I wrote a book about it. Deconstruction is not a rebellious move. Oftentimes there's a tone of rebellion, and oftentimes there is a breaking away from some relationships or some held fast beliefs about ourselves or the world around us and God. And all those things are okay. But breaking away, what's the point of being out of relationship with self, with others, or with belief? The point of being out of relationship is to take a space to consider how to be back into relationship within love's kind. So again, deconstruction is not moving from a negative view to a further negative view. Deconstruction is moving from a negative view to a positive view. We need space to discover what is negative so that we can recover what is positive. I love Hermann Hesse. I have been blessed to have Ron Dart brought into my life through St. Stephen's University, and we did a course on Hermann Hesse, and it was for me. I mean, it was for everybody, but that was such a spiritual moment of feeling like this is literature I am meant to find. And in Hermann Hesse's book, The Glass Bead Game, which is really about deconstruction, It's about taking in all these pieces of information and combining them to better understand a positive, more truthful way of being. Hess says, restudy and reconstruct. Now, if you're somebody who uses the word deconstruction, I'm of the mind that it might be more beneficial to change the language to say restudy and reconstruct. Restudying doesn't mean, dusting off the old, tired translations of a Bible or the old, tired texts that have caused you to feel negative about you, or for you to feel negative about other people, or for you to discover that you actually feel negative about God. Be informed to find better books. Ron is a friend who's further along the trail than I am, and he knows many good books. I trust his mentorship in my life. So when I discover Herman Hesse, it's helpful for me. It's a better piece of literature. And I don't have to agree with everything that Herman Hesse writes. I don't have to agree with everything that Ron Dart says to me. And in some ways, it's better not to, from an attachment perspective. We don't have to see things as all good or all bad. It's healthier that we see what is good and bad in all of our relationship with self, with others, and with God. Because I'm a person and I'm not always going to feel good about any of those relationships. And I give you permission to know that that is true for all of us. It's true. And that's why attachment theory causes me and many of us to consider a different view of God. Because either love is always loving or it is not love. Either love science is true or, attachment theory and this huge branch of psychology is completely wrong. So if love science is true, we're drawn into new questions about our view of self, our view of others, and our view of God. So with deconstruction, with reconstruction, these are some other words that I want to just put out there. And it's a little cheesy, but I think that it's beautiful. And I'm taking an easy reach with these words that I'm going to say. So restudy and reconstruct, it's really rediscovery. So we're discovering and rediscovering and discovering and rediscovering some things that we've always known in the fiber of our being, some things that are brand new. But again, the movement toward better and better truth. We're not moving towards more and more negative view of self, others, God. Rediscover, recover, review, reevaluate, repair. And so in this philosophical place, we philosophize and we become philosophical. We realize that we are all afforded the opportunity to be a philosopher. The humanistic sciences really encourage us to understand our own humanity. And there is an inner cosmos in our personal dimensions of self. And in that inner cosmos, when we think and feel, we come alongside of friends and think and feel with them. We read really good books and think and feel. We look at history, we look at philosophy, psychology, and spirituality. And deconstruction is measured by restudying and reconstructing. So if you're hearing this word, if you're saying it or you're hearing other people say it and you're concerned, maybe this little conversation is helpful. And I encourage you to consider deconstruction, to consider expanding your definition to a truer definition of what that is, and allow yourself to notice that deconstruction is deeply personal. And it really is always beneficial, or it is not deconstruction. Okay, guys, peace and love. We've got some amazing things coming up on the vlog. And if you are somebody who is considering the benefits of spiritual growth for your mental health, I wanted to let you know or remind you that we do have a Theology Summit coming up this May in Canmore, Alberta. That's May 19th to 22nd. And who is that for who belongs there? Everybody. If you're curious about supernatural love and want to be drawn further into conversations about love recovery, love discovery, and how that all blends and benefits us in a spiritual landscape, you belong. And it's in Canmore, baby. It's beautiful. So I'll put the info down below. Let's keep budding and growing forward. Take care.